Okay. Okay, let's try this again. Am I doing anything here? I have no idea. I think I'm recording. I'm using I think it's called a Samson, Simson, I believe. I can't see anything on it, and I bought it a long time ago. Anyway, it looks like a little uh, desktop type three-legged tripod, almost like an old Tokyo Rose, whatever. Anyhow, I recorded this video using the dash cam, the van cam, and the van cam, I keep it in the van because it's the only place that I can use it without turning the microphone off. I brought it in because I had to use it, and I didn't bring it in because I had to use it. I brought it in because I had to readjust some of the settings on it. Um, I had taken it off the mount that I have in the van and stuck it in my pocket because I was going to do some recording when we put this antenna up, and hence I forgot it was in my pocket, so I never did any recording with it. And I also changed some of the settings, so I had to reset the whole thing. Long story short, and I had it in here, so I figured, well, as long as I reset it, let me use it and see how it works, which I did. But this is the one that every time you touch the screen for any reason, it shuts the mic off. And there's no setting to change that. You either turn it on or off, and you're supposed to use the little mic icon that sits off in the corner, but no matter where you touch the screen, it goes off. So anyway, enough of that problem. So here's what we're doing here. I had built an antenna earlier. I believe it was the day prior to this one. Trying to make something small so that the commander of the flotilla would be able to use it in his house. I didn't know how his setup was, haven't been in his house, so I really have no idea how any of that works. And so that's where we're at. Now hold on a minute. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it was recording. So I made one out of a piece of half-inch or so PVC pipe, approximately 4.5 feet, maybe 4 feet long, and it seemed to be okay, but it was real sensitive, meaning no matter where I decided to put it, it never stayed the same with the SWRs because of everything that was kind of around it was just screwing it up. So I couldn't have something that sensitive because I didn't want them to blow up a radio because they're government radios. And the other thing is, I wouldn't want him to put a personal radio on it that he spends $300 or better for to find out that it blew up that radio. So I decided not to give him that one and just make a standard ground plane. And that's what this is that you're looking at here. The antenna length, the one that goes upright, that's basically the antenna. I've done videos on putting this together prior, when I was starting to build it, but never when I was done with it at this point. However, the ones that I'm working on now, those are considered the ground plane. The way that I normally describe it is an antenna needs a ground plane or a counterpoise, basically one the same. It depends, they argue that all the time, but I look at them both being as the same. Now, for instance, if I was to take that top piece, that one little piece sticking off the top, and mounted that on the van, I wouldn't need anything else because the van is acting as the ground side of the antenna. Now, if I had a fiberglass van, then at that point I'd have a problem because we need the metal, we need the steel, the plate, the aluminum. We need something that's going to be conductive in some way, shape, or form. So at that point, that's why I'm building these radios. Now, these radios that I'm building is basically acting as a van. All right, now I know the sizes are different, but the wavelengths also have a lot to do with it. Now, the bigger the ground plane, the better, but this is working, so it's not going to have a problem with it. Um, and at that point, there's 4 radials, 4 ground plane or counterpoise, and it's on that plate. And I believe I did a quick video on that plate, but if not, I'll tack on a little 30-second segment at the end of this and let you know what I'm talking about. So what I'm doing now is trying to make it safe, because again, not knowing this guy's house, does he have pets running around? Does he have kids running around? Because I wanted to kind of protect these ends a little bit. Now what I'm doing now, it will help, but it's really not going to help if somebody runs into it or falls into it. I put different connectors on it, so if somebody were to run into it, with a part of their body, it would bend and break off, which is a good thing. But when it comes to the eyes, the face, you really got to pay attention. So if he was to use this, I would tell him to put those like rubber sponge balls on it or something, so that they can see it, so they have something to see, and it would protect them a little bit if in fact they were to fall into it. But anyhow, that's what I'm doing now. I have some sheetrock anchors that I'm using. I just had to drill them out just a little bit, just to make them so they can snap in there, because they're slotted for a screw to fall into, not to be just pushed on. Then I'll put a little glue on them to hold them in place, and then I'll straighten it out, and then we'll check it from there. But the reason for this antenna was originally to give it to the commander for his house. He lives quite a ways away from their main repeater, and he, even though we've gone to the Coast Guard station in Stratford to fix their antenna system, or start, that's a whole other thing. If you've probably already seen that one. So at that point, this was for his house, because otherwise he'd have to drive 15 minutes or better from his house down to the station to get on the radio to check in for the AuxNet drill, which takes maybe a half an hour. It can take less, it can take a little more, but the averages is about a half an hour. And you really don't want somebody traveling, you don't want to put them in harm's way, especially in the wintertime. And with the price of gas nowadays, that's another story. So this is good for him to have at his house, because everybody else, well, not everybody, but 99% of us all do it from our house. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, if you have the ability to do so, because this is where I would probably be if I had to do anything in an emergency situation. This is where I'm going to do it from, here or in the van. And naturally the van's all set, and because it's a kind of a portable, it's all right for me to use it wherever I happen to be, and the same goes for anybody else. So, but however, we did Lowe's audio, and now I'm going through this. Now I'm getting ready to check the SWRs, the standing wave ratio, and I've explained that a few times in different ways, but the easiest way to explain it is you take two people, one of them a lot stronger than the other, and you have them start pushing against one another or pulling, whatever the case may be. And naturally the weakest of the two is going to give out first. Well, inside the radio there's a transistor. It's a three-legged transistor for most part. It's called a driver, a transmit transistor. I mean, it has a different names depending on who you're talking to, but the main thing is it does the transmitting. And that has to run on a good SWR. So if we look at that piece in the radio as the weakest link of these two people pushing against one another, and the antenna as the stronger one, well, as the radio, the weaker one is trying to push against the antenna, and if the antenna wasn't giving it any resistance, this transmit signal would just flow out the antenna and do what it has to do. If the antenna says, no, not going to happen, it starts to basically, it's like stopping the power from getting out or pushing it back, whatever you want to think of it as being. And it heats up that one, the weaker one, to where it's going to blow. Like the weaker person is going to give up, fall, pass out, whatever the case may be. And when that transistor pops, the radio is no longer going to transmit. So you want your SWRs as low as possible. And at that point, with low as possible, but you want it under 2. You like to see it under 1.1 to 8, 1.8, anywhere in that figure or lower, you're not going to have a problem. The higher, naturally, if you get long-winded, eventually it's going to put wear and tear on that part. Now, what we're looking at here, if you're looking at the green numbers on the right side and the purple one kind of below it, you would see that it said it's a 1 to 1.2, which is basically perfect. 1 to 1 is basically what it is. 1 to 1.2 or 1.12 is, I'm taking a video here so I can show them, you can't get any better. You really can't. I actually like my SWRs to be around the 1.2 because for some reason it seems to work a little bit better for me. But you don't want it to go above that 1.8. You like to keep it under that. 1.7, 1.6 I'd be happier with. 1.5 and under I'd be happier with. This I'm ecstatic about. It's right there, so he shouldn't have a problem with this no matter where he puts it, as long as it's not touching anything. And that's kind of where we're at here. So we ended up actually using this antenna at the station because the antenna they had was broke. It was just a nightmare. We went up there to do one thing and we ended up doing 10 different things. So we kind of had to makeshift our way through. Now, just because we did all that makeshifting, jury rigging, doesn't mean that it's not going to work or last. This antenna is going to work and it's going to last. However, I did tell him that, the design on this antenna being 10 feet from the ocean with the wind and it being up, 25 or so feet off the ground, it may not last forever, and because it's made of steel, some of it is stainless, and some is aluminum, some is brass, but regardless, eventually the weather's going to get to it. And those weak ends that I told you I put on there in case somebody bumps into it, it'll break. Well, eventually, if this gets ice built up on it, those pieces are going to start to weaken. So I had told them, if you're going to keep this up there, you got to put better ends on it so it's not going to break. That's where they attach to the mount. And you should spray it down with some type of a lacquer or a clear coat, something to protect it. As long as it's not metallic. You can paint it, you can do whatever you want with it, but you don't want anything that has metallic in it, metal flake in it, anything that's going to be conductive in any way, shape, or form. All right, so we're just about at the end here, so I'm going to cut it short right where we're at, and then I'm going to put that little in-between segment on there that I told you about, and we'll take it from there.